Good evening, everyone. We are back with another RFHL podcast. I'm going to keep saying that as often as I can until it sticks. It's the podcast with a hard J every time. I'm not even going to bring up the GIF conversation this time either. So I hope everybody enjoyed last week's being able to see Commissioner Sweetmeat and Kurt Cannonball and Rob gave us a great podcast. And I thought they had a great conversation last week. And we got something a little bit different for you this week. Tonight, I am joined by the Bob and Alex Packard. And how you guys doing tonight? Bob, how you doing tonight?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here. My kids are in bed. Happy that to talk some stats and that y'all are gonna listen to my ramblings, even though I'm not even in the league right now. So that's it doesn't get much better than that.
For those of you who do not know, I was confirming before the show if I should say the Bob or Stat Bob, because Bob is probably the maybe I'm wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong. Are you the originator of stat tracking for the RFHL?
I am not. No, they were keeping stats before I started. I started in season 3, and Dan was doing the write-ups back then, and Jeremy was keeping stats, and I thought this is amazing. But I did start some of the different metrics that I guess you would say looking at the stats a little bit differently, tracking stats a little bit differently. But yeah, I just nerd out about that type of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm glad to have you here because I know you've got some really great ideas for tonight and a little surprises for us along the way too. Alex, how are you doing tonight?
Good. You picked the first day of me having a cold and staying home from work to ask if I wanted to be on the podcast tonight, but I would do anything for this league. So I told my wife and my kid, get out of my face. I'm on the podcast tonight. So thankfully she is there. I think they're probably both actually sleeping right now. So
Good.
But yeah, no, excited to be here. Really, really honored.
Yeah, good. And another thing we were talking about beforehand is kids and getting them to sleep, and especially new kids. And so you're getting a little bit of sleep these days, right? A little bit.
Yeah, it was. Dude, I love my daughter to death, but those first 3 months, man, that was a trial and a half. So we're at 9 months now, and she's at least sleeping through the night. I would say 3 to 4 times a week now, which is, man, anybody without a kid, like, cherish as much sleep as you possibly can. There's nothing that can prepare you for not having it when you need it the most. But
Yeah.
No, we're good these days.
No, that's a good way to put it. And it's funny you mentioned those 3 months because another league member, actually, the person responsible for my nickname, Ryan Conco, recently also had his first. And I kept telling him those first 3 months, I kept saying the word over and over again. I said, it's the gauntlet. The first like 3 months are like a gauntlet with children. And if you can just like power through it, do what you got to do, lock down, flip the switch to dad mode, whatever it takes. And you get through that, things like really kind of start to come together. You get a routine and then hopefully you end up with a kid who sleeps really well. I had 2 of them. And then we were just talking about how that can change too real quick. So, enjoy the good night sleeps while you still get them also. So, but, anyways, we've got a great show for you guys tonight. We're bringing back the power rankings. Power rankings are back this evening. We're going to go through those. We've got a little twist on those power rankings tonight for you. I won't tell you until we get there. But first, I thought we could talk about a few things, especially whatever takeaways we had from this past week of RFHL. It was week 4, right? We're already 4 weeks in. Can you believe it? It's crazy to me that like we're a month into the season and things are going so fast. But there were some great games. First game of the night went to overtime. My body is still feeling it. I almost never am sore after the games, except for like your standard, like legs are tired the next day kind of stuff. And I woke up the next morning and my wife was like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "I'm not okay. Like I'm really not okay." My body was hurting. But a lot of the other games were really close too. And so actually, let me ask you, Alex, you said you played one of the earlier games that evening, right? I think maybe game number 2. the 7:30.
7:30 game. Yeah, and ours almost went to overtime. And thankfully, Brad decided to wait until literally the last second to put that one to bed. Because man, between picture night already setting us back about half an hour, and then another game going to overtime and having 15 penalties in the last 4 seconds. It was getting to a point where it was like, and of course it's got to be the week that the gym is 7 million degrees. So you had that factoring in as well. But yeah, thankfully ours ended a little bit shorter than your guys's did.
Yeah, it's funny you say that last second, because that might have been the most last second goal in RFHL history. And I think we can say that pretty comfortably because I was on the stage doing color commentary on the live chat or on the live stream for that. And there was a lot of talk on the stage about whether or not that was a good goal or if it was after the whistle. I heard some rumblings asking for replay review in the RFHL, and I said, pump the brakes, everybody. We just got the podcast back up and going. We just got the live streams on YouTube going. We don't need replay review just yet. Let's do at least another season or two before we start getting a little too fancy here.
I watched the game back, and I mean, you can literally see me. I didn't take anything off. I stayed right in the crease. I stayed in the net because I was like, there's no way that was a good goal. Like I was like, definitely, it was like a hair short, but I also wasn't on that side of the net, and I'm also incredibly biased, and I wanted to win really badly, so I didn't argue any of it. But Sweet said it was a good goal, so that's where the conversation ends.
Yeah, well, there were a few people who also said that Sweet was aware that it's photo night and needed to keep things moving along, and maybe we couldn't afford a second overtime game right in a row. So I don't know. We'll leave it up in the air. The Canadian in the chat offered up a rule change saying that if the puck is still in the air like a basketball shot after the buzzer, it should still count. That was funny to me. I saw that. Bob, did you see the end of that game at all?
I did. I was on the stage too, and it was close. You know, I give Sweet some credit. I think it's a tough call. I don't think, you know, picture night or anything was weighing into that. I think he wants to get the call right, but that was, you know, the only thing I can think of is I'm watching it from the stage across the gym right next to the buzzer. So the buzzer is loud in my ear, and I'm watching it hit the net as the buzzer's going off. And so maybe it's crossing the line before it hits the corner, the top corner, because, you know, Brad was on the near side, you know, close to the announcers, close to Bill rather, you know, the press box, and he shoots it across the net into the far corner. So maybe it crosses the line before it hits the corner when the siren's going off, but I don't want to make that call. That's why I'm not a ref.
Yeah, I made the joke about him calling it because it was picture night because he made that joke first. So
Sure.
I'm not accusing him of anything here, but
no,
Sweet
doesn't get paid overtime. So he was like, no, I'm not doing this. Like,
That's right.
Yeah. He's like, let's get out of here.
No, I thought it was, you know, for what it was, I thought it was the right call. My personal opinion, watching it in the moment, I thought it was the right call. I also thought that it was close enough that I could totally understand seeing it the other way around, because it was, I mean, I don't even think the human eye could have perceived that perfect, like any better, you know, and of course you're trying to match up what you're hearing. You can't hear it on the live stream, at least the buzzer, I don't think so. So there is no replay review, even if we wanted it. But Bob, you were there for the end of that one because you were doing, did you do the stream? Were you on broadcast for the 8:30?
I was broadcast for the 9:30. I was nerding out. I went to the last 3 games, and then I watched your game on the stream afterwards because I wanted to do my homework for tonight, man. You know, so I was just being a nerd and sitting there, and people kept being like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I don't have a good. I don't know. I'm going to an adult recreational hockey game on my, you know, just to watch guys and gals, you know, play."
Just when I think I'm out, that's when they pull me back in.
That's right.
Oh, and we got our first movie quote of the night here, so we're up and running. No, you know, it's actually it's a good testament to what the league is and what it means to a lot of people. And maybe if I get a little sappy here for a second, you know, you're right. Once you're in, you're always in. And that's, I think, one of the really awesome things about the RFHL is that there is that camaraderie. There is that like brother, I'd say brotherhood, but we got some fantastic female players as well. But that's how it feels, right? You're there, and even when you're not playing, you're still interested. You still want to follow along. I know that there are people watching in California, Bergie Wink, who are keeping tabs on the league still every once in a while. So it's a testament to what the league is. And I think it's a testament to also the things that we're still building here, bringing back the podcast, getting the streams up and going, and everybody's buying in and they love it. And how could you not? So since you were there for that 8:30 game, give us your thoughts. How do you feel? Actually, let me say one last thing. The good point I wanted to make about that camaraderie is that no matter how tough a game is, and you could be beating the living tar out of one another, and after that game everybody goes right back to being friends. And I can say that personally because things got really chippy in that 6:30 game, and I kept my mouth shut for a long time, and maybe Red might say otherwise, but I kept my mouth shut for a long time. But they kept barking at me, and sooner or later I made sure that they remembered that I was undressing them all night to the tune of 5 goals and 1 assist. So I wanted to make sure that they remembered who was out there. So I barked back a little bit. But I say that because at the end of the game, I shook Ramsey's hand. I talked to some of the other guys, and I just said, that was a good one. That was a tough one. Let's leave it out on the court. And I think everybody else feels that way. So, Bob, what do you think about that 8:30 game? How do you feel that the 8:30 showdown went? Because I heard it was a good one, but I was driving for that one myself. So,
I mean, listen, I watched the 6:30 game the next day, and I was on the edge of my seat, even though I knew the outcome, watching the game the whole time. I was there for the 8:30 game. I was not on the edge of my seat. To throw shade at these two teams, but it was not my favorite game of the night. It was a low scoring game. The chemistry didn't seem to be there on either team, really. Both teams seemed like they were trying to find themselves. And the Tremblements, lost to the Tipsy Talking Twisters 6-4. But it's a game that I think could have gone either way. It was some bounces one way, some Hook had some great looks that just didn't go in. It felt like it was a game that could have gone either way, but almost like neither team really wanted it as much as in some of the other games. So there you go. I've got some bulletin board material. I'm not even in the league. You guys can, check me against the boards or anything, but that was my take on the 8:30.
This is like the equivalent of somebody making an anonymous like Facebook page and then just blasting everybody because you're like, yeah, you can't get to me. You can't get to me.
Yes, how scandalous, Bob. You're going right for the throat right out of the gate here, and I love it. So dare I say, are you saying 6-4? Are you saying that game was a little bit of maybe less scoring than you thought? Maybe a little like kind of. Did you say boring? Did you say boring?
I don't know if I said boring. I was trying not to say the word boring.
I don't know if I said it or thought it.
Yeah. No, in all seriousness, I know I'm throwing some shade here. My issue with those two teams is they have a lot of talent. They've got some good goaltending, some great goaltending, and the chemistry wasn't there. I wrote down in my notebook because I'm a nerd and I bring a notebook to a recreational floor hockey league. Where's the chemistry? Because it's just they've got the talent. There's two great rookies on Le Tremblements. I don't speak French. Whatever.
No, hey, that was you nailed it. That was perfect. As a French speaker, you nailed it.
All right, cool. I'll have some baguette later. But there, I think there's a lot of upside on that team. I think like if they can click, let me speak positive. If they can click, if they can, not just the rookies but the whole team together, then there's a lot of talent on that team. But it just felt disjointed to me. It felt like they weren't playing all together.
It's funny you say that because you do see every season where a team might come out of the gate pretty good. They might do well. I'm trying not to like just talk about our team because I don't feel like our team was the only team this way, but there are teams that come out and you kind of feel like, oh my God, they already look like they're 3-4 weeks in, they got that chemistry going. But then you have other teams that come out a little bit slower and the chemistry takes time to build. And then you either see it build and they do bring it together. And I think both of those 830 teams are capable of that. And then sometimes you see teams where they just kind of keep coasting. Now it's my turn to throw a little gas into the fire here, but sometimes maybe you see that little bit coasting and you almost got to wonder, do they have a team chat? Are they communicating? Because I will say that one of my favorite things about this league is that so many people, it's not just Wednesday night. There's a couple of nights a week where people are chatting or already talking about next week's game. And then you get a team chat every once in a while where you're really like already talking strategy, matchups, who are you playing against next week? And you're doing it on a Friday night, the week before, your game. So it makes me wonder, like if either of those teams come together, maybe it's a chemistry building thing, or maybe it's something where they're not coming together and they got to talk a little bit more, fire up that team chat and get using the Discord a little bit more often. Alex, have you ever been on any teams like that or ever feel that way about any of your teams one way or the other?
Oh, I mean, constantly. I mean, last season, I was on a team that I don't think we won a game until I want to say week 6 or 7. So it's in those first few weeks where, I mean, I got to throw myself in there as well. Like I wasn't playing great. It just was passes want to go one way and they just seem to not go to who, they thought, or maybe the person didn't even know the pass was coming to them. That's what I tell people is like one of the hardest things. That's why I don't like being a captain, is because you can pick what you think is a perfect team on paper. You can pick guys that put up points. You can look at their career stats and be like, all right, I'm going to pick, number 1, number 10, number 15. You know what I mean? Like you can pick a pretty even spread and be like, well, statistically, these guys are all amazing, so my team is going to be fantastic. You would never know who's going to have chemistry and who's not until you start playing. To put a positive spin on it, though, like an 8th seed won the cup last year. Those guys, I can't remember a single regular season game that they played last year because they were kind of a meh, boring team because it didn't seem like they gelled at all. And then all they did was have 3 good games at the end of their season and they won the freaking cup. So that's what, I mean, maybe it's just because I want to throw a positive spin on it all. That's kind of all you need is just 3 really good games at the end, even if it took you 10 weeks to develop chemistry. As long as you do develop it at some point, that's the important thing. So, there is hope yet for a team that doesn't seem to have it 4 weeks in.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Every team makes the playoffs, right? So as much as I think the league appreciates the competitive level right out of the gate from week 1, and everybody wants to win their games, you make a great point in knowing that if you start looking at those 10 weeks in a row as almost like practice, and then you get to the 3 games that matter for the playoffs, it's team building. It's getting used to the play styles. It's getting used to the runs and the cuts and things that people want to make. I actually have some insider info from last season that I can share now, but I know Brad was playing most of last season hurt, like I think his ankle was pretty hurt, so that might have been why they didn't look quite like the team you thought they were. And then of course they ended up going on to be only the 2nd team ever to win the cup as that 8th seed. So it's you're right. If you learn to come together and you get things right and it all comes together towards the end, those first 10 weeks can be whatever they need to be in order for you guys to learn each other and play it out there.
And again, speaking from experience, like sometimes it takes several weeks of sucking as a team and getting mad at each other for, hey, you didn't do this right. Hey, you didn't do this right, whatever. Like sometimes it takes that to fuel you into being like, what are the solutions here? Let's fix this shit. You know what I mean? Like, so by the time you do get to playoff time, or maybe you get to week 8 or week 9 or whatever it may be, like sometimes it took you stumbling and falling for you to get your feet underneath yourself. I mean, I know I sound like a motivational cat poster right now, but there's got to be some truth to it because it happens. We've seen it happen before.
Yeah.
Let's
So
keep in mind too, though, that these two teams we're talking about, they're both 500. They're both 2-2. So it's not like,
yeah,
winless. It's not like they're looking for their first win. Like, I'm being a little overly critical probably just with what I saw that just last night or Wednesday night. But it's not like these are teams necessarily searching for their souls either.
yeah.
Yeah.
So real quick, that 9:30 game, Bob, I know you said you saw it. Alex, did you catch it, or were you sleeping? Well, you could sleep before baby woke up again, or not. But Bob, what did you see in that 9:30 game? And then we'll move right along into the power rankings.
It was the polar opposite of the 8:30 game. It was super high scoring. The 8:30 game was 6-4. The 9:30 game was 22-15. Like they had over 10 goals combined by the end of the first period. So they had already matched the previous game by the end of the first period. It was Meteor Mayhem controlled the game from the beginning. It's 22-15, high scoring game. 7 goals doesn't seem like a lot when it's 22-15 because it seemed, but Tsunami Tacticians were playing from behind the entire game. They were trying to catch up to Meteor Mayhem the entire game. They would make a run, they would score a couple of quick goals, and then Meteor Mayhem would just answer right back and score another couple of goals. So it felt almost like in basketball when you were trading 2s for 3s. They like Tsunami Tacticians would have a dunk or a good layup or something, and then Meteor Mayhem would come back and shoot a corner 3. So it was just ran away with it.
Yeah, Alex, any 9:30 game thoughts there? Even about both teams,
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's just a case of kind of to go back to what we were saying before. Meteor seems to be a team that kind of has a gel, has a fluidity to them, has their game figured out. Tsunami is a very offensively heavy team, but the goaltending and the defense flat out just need to be better with that team. Like it's I mean, and it's really tough. Your team scores 15 goals and you're still losing a game. That sucks. It's kind of like, how are we going to figure this out? But I just, that's kind of my only takeaway. And I feel as a goalie, I'm entitled to have the opinion that the goaltending needs to be better. But I will also say too, like, we played that team and their defense needs to be better. They don't really step up a lot. There doesn't seem to be really a lot of defensive pressure, because I was telling our guys during our game against them, like, hey, you guys have a lot more time than you think you do. Pick your head up. Like, almost every play, guys had the chance to pick their heads up and like look for a pass, look for a shot. So if that's the case, it's you kind of have to adjust defensively to be like, well, why are we giving guys that much time to shoot? Why are we, you know what I mean? So I think just focusing on the that end of the court, if you will, with them. They're not a bad team by any means. So and we're only halfway through the league or the season, so it's not. I'm trying to give them the most credit I can in saying they're not a lost cause by any means. They can absolutely turn it around. I think there just needs to be more focus on their own end of the court, as opposed to just trying to barrage shots, which they absolutely can do and will do. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a fairly simple fix. It's just, it needs to be applied.
Second fewest blocks in the league as a team.
Yeah, and I'll even throw. The Bob was talking about doing some of his fancy stats before we got in here, and looking at some different stats that are maybe not the same ones you'll see on the sheet, but some that he's been noting of. And I will say that week 1, I was a little interested because we wanted to see if there was a feasible way to go back, watch the videos, and track even something like plus minus for a game. And so I did, and I went back to week 1 when we played Tsunami, and went through our game, and I was shocked to find, now I won't throw him under the bus by saying who it was, but I was shocked to find that there was one player on that team that was minus 10 for that game. And then there was another player on that team who locked himself down to a minus 8 in that game. And I'm smiling, and I see you guys smiling because I'm wondering if you picked up on my little hint there. But it was surprising to see those high numbers, because a lot of the goals were coming with us with specific guys out on the floor. And as a team as a whole, you kind of see that need to be like, okay, we've got the offense. We're really good at that, but we do have to find the balance a little bit more. Otherwise, we could score as much as we want and it's still not enough, like you were saying. So, so I think this is a really good segue into this week's or the version 2 or however we want to put it. This is the second power rankings of the season. And I am going to simply just say, Bob, when you have any time that you would like things to move along, just cue me along here. Trying to say that without giving away too much, but here is your very official-ish RFHL power rankings, round number 2.
All right. So, yeah, power rankings. I think I already threw some shade out there, but here's my disclaimer. My disclaimer is I watched 1 week's worth of games fully. I've seen some other games here and there, and I'm looking at the stats. So if you had an off week, I'm sorry. Just talking twisters, I'm sorry. But I've got you in the 8th spot. And this is a little surprising probably because they're a 2-2 team. You know, there's a couple of teams below them in the standings. But my issue with the twisty talking twisters comes down to goal scoring. They're a selfless team. They have good chemistry. But when I watched that game, they just didn't challenge the goalie much. You know, Matt did a little bit. Conco had some good looks, but nobody on that team is taking over the game. And so they need that chemistry. They have a 63% assist to goal ratio, highest in the league. So they've already got good chemistry going for them, and they're not scoring a lot of goals. They have 3 players, all with 5 goals for. And Conco while missing a game, but still, that's way down on the stat sheet. You know, there's players that rookie Jake and Paul have more goals than this entire team combined. They had 3 1-goal games in the other weeks because week 4 had an empty net, so I'm calling it a 1-goal game. So their losses were 1-goal games. Their losses and wins are all 1-goal games, so they all could have gone either way. One win was with a sub with Jesse when Conco and Kirk were missing. And in that game, Matt put up a 91% and faced 69 shots. So Matt's
nice,
but he's not going to do it all without more scoring from this team. And it just makes me nervous. Lowest scoring efficiency in the league also at 11.6%. So counterpoint, they're the only team to beat another team that I have ranked pretty highly. So what do I know? But we'll see where that goes. So next team I'm going to piss off. Now it's the Storm Surge. Storm Surge actually, you know, their record would suggest they should be the 8th spot, but where's the fun in that? They lost to Le Tremblements week 1 by 6, but they were missing, and they had a full team that week. They were missing Foss and Chatterton in week 2 for the shellacking by the Tacticians. They lost a 5-goal game to the Firestorms with a sub in net. I think that was you, Alex.
Yep.
And they lost a close one to Sinkhole while missing Tom Venero. So that is where I'm coming back to is if they had Tom, if they had a full team against Le Tremblements, which I think is a good team, even though I was throwing shade at them earlier. If they have a full team, if they're getting together and they're gelling, I think there's more upside on this team. But here's the problem. Brandon has faced 99 shots and 53 shots. So what's happening with the team defense chemistry here? Like he's getting just pounded, and not having a full team for half the season is probably hurting some of that chemistry. That being said, what I saw, which makes me I had a draft of this where they were ranked up to number 6. What I saw that I really liked Wednesday night was great rotation, great positioning, great passing, but their record is still 0-4. So if we go to number 6, we're going to look at the Tsunami Tacticians. Again, where's the chemistry here? Ton of talent, ton of goal scoring, but I'm just not seeing it gel yet. And Jake, the rookie Jake and Reddit together have more goals than 3 full teams do. So they are scoring at a high rate. But Tim is, Alex, you hit on this earlier. Tim is facing 50 plus shots every single game. Every single game, he's faced at least 50 shots on net. That's not the most in the league, but it's also not the lowest in the league either. And they need to limit those shots. They need to get more blocks, second lowest in the league in blocks. And if that chemistry gets going, could we see a 30-goal game? Like, I don't know. Like, this team's got the talent. Could that would be ridiculous, but
weirder things have been said on this podcast already than Tsunami scoring 30 goals. So.
Yeah, I would feel terrible for whomever goalie that was that took that brunt too. That would be a tough one.
I'm knocking all sorts of wood right now.
Yeah. Number 5, Les Tremblements. Where is the scoring going to come from? Dan leads the team right now with 9 goals, and Shane has 6 goals. But Dan's 9 goals ranks 9th in the league. I get it. They were built as a defensive team, but I didn't see that team chemistry on defense. Didn't see it in week 4, at least. They have fantastic goaltending. I already said this earlier in the podcast, but 2 very solid rookies. A lot of upside here. I had Les Tremblements up to the 4th spot in one of my drafts because I just think as a full team, the more they play together, there's a lot of upside with those rookies. But I just don't see it yet. I haven't. The proof is in the pudding, so to speak. I didn't witness it. They have the lowest goal to assist ratio at 26%. So that's less than half of some of the other teams on their goal to assist ratio. So the one thing I did notice that I should have mentioned on the recap is that they were cheating toward the puck a little bit. Or I'm sorry, the other team was cheating toward the puck against the Tremblements. And Les Tremblements were not finding the open man. So I don't know if it's just a court awareness thing. Maybe it's not chemistry. Maybe it's court vision, ice vision, ice awareness, or maybe it's chemistry. But they need to find the man.
Sometimes you feel it. Sometimes you just have to pick your eyes up.
Yeah. Sinkhole Sidewinders coming in at number 4. Brad just looks effortless out there. I don't know, like. One of the earlier podcasts, we're talking about when a goalie's in the zone and he makes it look like it's effortless, like it's no big deal. Brad has that, and I've never seen that like on a floor, or maybe not never. I mean, your cousin there, Alex, maybe made it look effortless too.
Hockey Jesus walking on water. Yeah, that's. I feel very fortunate that that's who trained me how to be a goalie, because holy crap.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I'm talking about Zach Davis, but yeah, Brad just looked effortless out there. They have 2 losses, but those losses were a close one against Fukushima in week 1 at full strength, and a close one against Les Tremblements, who I just ranked lower than them. So I know, go ahead, put that on the bulletin board. In week 3, when Mark put up a 93% save percentage. So you run into a goalie at a 93% save percentage, you're not going to win a lot of those matchups. Alex, you've faced 60 plus shots 3 times this season already, and your team's in the bottom half in blocks. So where I would look for this team to grow and to do better is to get more blocks, to limit some of those shots. Not that, you're a bad goalie, but that, every goalie's going to get better if they're facing lower quality shots and less shots on them.
Hey, it ain't last, baby. I'm happy with your ranking.
You might be the only team that's going to be happy with my rankings, because here comes Fukushima face-off at number 3. This, other than putting the Twisters at number 8, this is the one that I thought is going to probably rile the most people up, because they just beat the Firestorms, and you haven't heard me say the word Firestorms yet, so it doesn't take a genius to assume that I'm going to put the Firestorms ahead of Fukushima face-off. But I'm not a believer in this team yet. 3 wins. I think they're a good team. I think they're in the top half of the league. I've got them ranked number 3, but I'm not ready to crown them number 1. The first win was against a team down 2 players. Their loss was against the full-strength Meteor Mayhem team, and their second win was against the Tipsy Talking Twisters that were down 1 with a goalie sub. The team is, there's been a lot of time spent on how gritty they are and how tough they are and how hard nosed they are, or whatever adjective you want to use to say like kind of a pain in the neck to play against. But they can score sometimes. But they don't, they have Furlano who can take over a game, but where is the balanced scoring coming from? Where's the rest of the scoring coming from? I'm just not a believer yet.
One of those teams that I was looking at just kind of overall season stats, and it's one of those teams where I like that it's color coded because it really does show you which teams have a heavy gap in between their top scorer and then their second scorer. Well, I mean, speaking from experience, blue is the same way, but how far up the score sheet Furlano is, and then Ramsey was the next scorer, and I want to say he was a full maybe 10 spots below him. So way less balanced scoring than a lot of the other teams were.
Yeah, absolutely. So number 2 is the Firestorm Hockey Club. This team, I got them ranked number 2. So let me give you something that's going to piss off this team, because my goal is to piss off every player in the league before I'm done.
Hey, all I'm going to say is there's nothing wrong with 2. There's nothing wrong with number 2.
There's going to be something wrong with what I'm about to say.
Here we go.
He's like, no, hold on a minute.
Yeah,
I think you've hit your max.
Oh,
I think you're playing at the top of the game. I don't think there's any more upside. You've played every team.
Hold on, I want to talk so everybody can see my reaction to that.
I was going to say, because you only see the person who's talking at once, and Alex's face is priceless right now. So,
oh man, what a low blow. Keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
I don't think it's a low blow. I think what it is you've played you're the only team to play every game at full force strength. You're also the only team to play against every other team at full strength too. So I think what you see is what you get with this team. Like, I don't think there's any more, like, yeah, there's probably some like small like improvements that can be made, but like I think that what you see is what you get. I think this is what you're going to look like in week 8. I don't think there's a lot more development that's going to happen. Like there might be some iterations, but I think we've seen what this team is, and I think it's good. I think it's very good. 3-0-1. Just lost to Fukushima, went to overtime, but Firestorm controlled the puck and the possession the majority of the game. I watched the tape, and it was even though Fukushima had the lead early on in the game, Firestorms controlled the pace, controlled the puck for the majority of the game, had a lot of quality chances that could have easily been a couple of goal margin in your favor. And Steve had to put up an 89% save percentage, his highest of the season. And D'Angelo was sick last night. So not everybody may know that, but D'Angelo has been sick for about a week.
Yeah, he was not feeling great, but he showed up because he didn't want to miss picture night. And I was proud of him for taking shifts. He was talking about not playing at all, but I don't think a lot of people knew that he was coming off of a pretty rough couple of days. So
Firestorms is 3rd in goals for, tied for 2nd in goals against, 1st in blocks, 2nd in assists, 3rd in assist to goals ratio. Great all-around balanced team. I wanted to make them number 1 overall, but first of all, where's the fun of that? But second of all, I'm nervous that other teams have more room for improvement, and we might be seeing Firestorm already operating at peak performance.
I'll save my thoughts for when Alex and I get to rip into this a little bit, but I don't disagree, but I'll explain more soon.
All right, and that leads us to Meteor Mayhem, number 1 overall. Their only loss was week 1 against the Tipsy Talking Twisters, who I have ranked number 8. So, again, what do I know? But the Twisters had a sub that week, and Matt had a 91% save percentage in that game, and he faced 75 shots. They beat Fukushima in week 2 while they were down a player, Dave Fos. They crushed Le Tremblements 14-14 in week 3 without Dave Fos. They haven't had Brett in the last 2 weeks. They had Mark subbing last week in week 4 and Frankie.
Brett's just a little busy right now, just a little busy. Just, having coming to terms of being a father and all that, but
got a lot going on.
But they only have 19 blocked shots as a team. I looked at that stat and I double checked the formula first to make sure that it was adding up right, and then I manually like tallied up everybody's blocks, and it's 19. So that is a little bit of an area of concern for me, but their scoring efficiency is 20%. So I did a little bit of stat, magic over here, or whatever you want to call it, and looked at all the shots taken each week. And they've taken 259 shots on net, with 51 of them converting into goals. So about 1 out of every 5 times they shoot the puck, it's going in. So it's hard. That's top in the league. It's going to be hard to beat a team that's scoring 1 out of every 5 times they put it on net. So that is my very scientific, foolproof, irrefutable power rankings. What saith thee?
Yeah, first I want to say thank you to Bob for doing the rankings here, because I know that this is something that you guys used to do with the podcast before it was the podcast, and it was the original Circle of Jerks. And so that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to turn over the power rankings for you this week. Give a little round of applause to the Bob for doing what he did for so long, and then bringing it back, full circle moment here for a little bit. So we are getting a little closer for time, so I want to make sure that Alex and I both get a chance to really tear into your awful rankings. But I do also want to get to some of the previews for next week. So let me ask you this, Alex, how do you feel about these rankings? And then maybe from your perspective, how do you feel about the Bob's assessment of your team, or maybe some of his assessments with some of the other teams that stood out to you? Good, bad? What do you think? How would you do this?
I mean, I don't know how anyone could have just sat through every single analytical, minuscule detail that he just spit out and be like, whoa, no, that's bullshit. Like, stats are stats. They're hard to argue. I don't really disagree with, I will say I don't heavily disagree with any of them. There are maybe 1 or 2 teams that I would swap, maybe. I'm just like picking and choosing here. Like, maybe you could swap 7 and 8. Maybe you could swap 1 and 2. Maybe you could even swap 3 and 4. You know what I mean? I don't heavily disagree with any of them. And maybe even for the sake of time, I'll just say, Bob, I bow down to you. That was biblical, what you just spit out. That was awesome.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. I did enjoy that. And I was thankful as you were doing it. I kept thinking, man, I'm so glad he was able to join tonight and do these rankings, because I
was just saying before we started recording, like you were kind of going over like that last little nugget that you said about Meteor, where you're like you plugged a formula in to figure out that 1 in 5 of their shots go in the net, which as a goalie, I was like, that's absolutely horrifying to hear that. But I don't know that anybody's ever like bothered to like prove that with like math before. So I mean, yeah, again, just good job, man.
It's going to be, I think it's going to be helpful with the games being live streamed on YouTube. And then of course you can go back and watch them anytime. I think you're going to see some of the Bobs come out of the woodwork here and get real interested in digging into the data or looking at it. It's still my hope, and I've kind of mentioned this before, that it'd be really nice to eventually talk about, is there a possibility of getting a second camera set up somehow and getting a different angle for the game so you can see both ends, maybe even if it was like side by side. I don't know. I don't stream at least at that level, so it's certainly not something I'm aware of whether or not it's even possible. But to go through the rankings real quick, you heard me say a little bit earlier that I don't disagree with your assessment for our team, but I do disagree with the perspective that you're applying that point through. So you're saying that you're wondering if we've already peaked. You're wondering if this is it. If what you see is what you're going to get. And to that, I say, Bob, what's wrong with that? Why wouldn't you want to have a team peaking by week 3 playing their best hockey, being in the top half of every stat category you just listed, and then going out there and putting up, I mean, what are we putting up on average right now? I want to say probably double-digit goals per game. And then on defense, you've got, tops in the leagues in block. You've got Kenton, who's playing out of his mind so far to start the season. And I mean, so what if we've peaked? Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe peaking early is a sign that the chemistry is already there, and you don't have to have those huge variances or something to build off of that to go from where we already are, because it's already enough. I'm just going to say that because that's how I feel. I'm a hopeless optimist. I'm a Bills fan, so it's put in my blood to be that way. But I kept thinking to myself, his assessment is perfectly good, but I just wonder if the way he's presenting it as a bad thing is actually a good thing. And
Well,
you
you
can
guys
look
are-
at it both ways.
You guys are master debaters. This is fascinating to listen to.
The only thing I really agree with the listing for the most part. You made the point of whether or not we can be ranked ahead of Fukushima right after losing to them, to which I might say that, teams lose to other teams all the time. But when I do a rankings, at least, I'm kind of looking at the big picture, not just who's beaten who and the parity of it, because then you'd never be able to put teams 1 through 8. But if you're looking at the bigger picture, I've seen some games where Fukushima looked a little lost. I've seen some games where they look like they're passing and making plays fantastically and comfortably and without even thinking twice about it. So I think when they find that consistency, you're going to see them really make you force that ranking into a different spot up higher. I would actually, if I were doing these rankings myself, I'd put Tsunami in that 8 spot, and I'd move Tipsy right up to 6, and I just flip-flop those. That might be the only change that I would do. You touched upon it earlier, so I'm going to kick the hornet's nest myself a little bit too. And the last time I did this, they set a new record for the most amount of goals in a game for the RFHL in the very next week. So whoever's playing Tsunami next week, I'm sorry, but I'm about to say it anyways. Tsunami they're all gas and no brakes. And if they don't figure out defense, if they don't have guys step up and start to play responsible hockey on the back end, they're going to keep losing games even when they score 15 goals, 16 goals. And you hear a couple of them talk about how good they are at defense, how much they play lockdown defense, and that -8 is saying a whole different story, So I would still put them in that 8 spot only because they are so capable of instantly going up into the 1, 2, 3 spot as soon as they start playing defense. But it's almost like they all are more happy just kind of chasing the stats right now. And I don't know, maybe I'm kicking the hornet's nest by saying that too. But if they put it together, they would go up. But right now, until I see any the ghost of defense from them, they're going to be in the 8 spot, in my opinion. But other than that, I like these rankings. I thought they were pretty good. I do see some bulletin board material here, and I think everybody appreciated that the last time the rankings came out. So we'll see what happens. But moving right along, just because we got about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we have time to go through the week 5 matchups for this coming week. So at 6:30, we've got Tipsy Talking Twisters versus Tsunami Tacticians. And I'm already kicking myself because I see that I didn't change the teal color over for this one. And I was doing the color-coded text and everything, and I was so proud of myself. And look, I already bungled it up. It's only the second time I've done this show. So I like this game on paper. Maybe this is the opportunity for Tsunami to show some defense. Maybe this is the opportunity for Tipsy to show some more consistency from all of their players and up the scoring from the guys you expect to do some of that scoring. Bob, I think it was you who said it, and I thought it was perfectly said. They look like a team that's still waiting for that one person to step up and be the guy who can take over a game. And I think you almost use those exact words. And I think as soon as Tipsy does that, you're going to start to see them play really great. To know that they have that one guy who's got all the confidence in the world when he's out there doing whatever it is he's doing, dangling, shooting, whatever. As soon as that happens, I think they're going to be great. 7:30, we've got Sinkhole Sidewinders against my Firestorms. I always say my Firestorms. It's Bills, Smiths, Firestorms Hockey Club. I'm looking forward to this one. I always really like playing against Brad. Most of the time, that's because I'm talking with his Bob, Brad's Bob, throughout the week whenever this matchup happens, and it's always a fun time playing against him. But I think that St. Cole, like I think one of you guys said earlier, you guys are starting to come together. I think you're starting to see that buildup of the chemistry we were talking about, where maybe you were an example of that team that didn't have it right away, but now you're figuring out who you are. You're figuring out your roles. You're doing what you got to do. So I expect this one to be another pretty close and tough game, especially since, there's an opportunity for St. Cole to keep building, and they're going to want to keep building against a team that they know. I think a lot of teams are looking at our team and maybe Meteor and Fukushima as the teams to measure themselves against a little bit. So I could see this being a pretty good game. At 8:30, we've got Meteor Mayhem versus Storm Surge. I'm personally also looking forward to this one. I'm trying to figure out when the call for broadcasting comes out. I've got to pick and choose which ones I can do, because I want to be able to stay for at least one of them, call it. But there's so many good games on the schedule this week that it's a tough one to figure out which one I can stick around for. But this one's going to be great. I want to see if Meteor keeps it up. I'm kind of curious if they keep playing as the same team that they are when Brett does come back in net. And I say that because I was talking last week, Alex, not this past week, the week before, you played in a back-to-back as a goalie. We saw some other goalies playing back-to-back in recent weeks as subs. And I was talking about that, and I talked to a couple different goalies, and they all said that a lot of times they feel less pressure playing on the second half, even though you're tired and the gym takes it out of you as a goalie. You almost feel like, okay, now I'm just loose and whatever happens. And that kind of mindset helps. Some of the guys were saying that, when I sub for another team, I feel a little bit more pressure to do well because I don't want to let them down. I always said that when I subbed for another team, I felt less pressure in that, and that actually helped me play better, I feel. But almost always, and maybe this is a call for the Bob to come out with another stat here. I'd be curious to see how goalies play for their own teams, and then if they subbed for other teams that same season, if their stats were aligned with the way that they play for their own team, or if there's enough variance up or down to see if it was different. So I say all of that because Meteor's played half their games so far this season without their starting goalie. And we all know Brett's great. And maybe I'm going to piss Brett off a little bit here, but we all know Mark has been fantastic too. And having Mark in net and having an in rhythm Mark in net is almost always going to be a very tough test for a team. So this is going to be a tough one for Storm because Fos has been scoring, Trito's been scoring, Tom's been scoring, but they don't seem to be scoring enough from the depth in order to stay in games. And then I said that this past week about them, and then they ended up having a ton of depth scoring in their game from Chatterton and I think Ellen got on the board and Thiessen.
No, she sure did. I almost quit hockey after Ellen scored on me.
Yeah, so
not because it was Ellen. I'm saying because she pinned a dagger in my heart and we almost lost. So
it was a great goal, and it
was an amazing goal.
Yeah, and on the commentary, Bill and I were talking about it. We predicted her to score in that game. Bill called it. But then I kept telling him, I was like, she is making all the right runs, doing all the right things. And sometimes that's all it takes to get the right bounces. And then it comes to you from there. And you could just feel it. You could kind of feel that it was coming. And then when it happened, of course, everybody always erupts when Ellen scores. And I love that. So if Storm Surge gets depth scoring here, and if they meet a Brett in net who's maybe a little bit out of rhythm from not playing the last 2 weeks, we could see an upset. I don't know. Maybe this is an upset special kind of game. So last but not least, 9:30, the RFHL After Dark, if you will. We got Le Tremblement versus Fukushima face-off. This is my game of the week. I always pick a game of the week whenever I do the podcast, and I'm able to show this. We all know that the 6:30 is also officially the PDR game of the week, because that is the highlighted game on the stream. PDR does the call. This game, I think, is going to be the game to watch this week. I don't know if you guys agree, but I feel like Le Tremblement and Fukushima and the matchup on paper, I think that one is going to be just a really tight game. So real quick, give me your thoughts on each of the matchups. Throw in your predictions if you want. Whatever it is you want to talk about each matchup, all of them, any of them, whatever you got. Alex, give me what you got first.
Well, so two, you had mentioned before the show you wanted me to maybe do like almost like my movie rankings with these. So I was thinking while you were listing them off here, like, all right, like I want to have some parity. I don't want to give each one that said just 7 out of 10. So if I'm going based on my anticipation for these games, because these games can go any, 17 different directions. If I'm basing these on anticipation, I'll say 6:30. I'd say that's about a 6 out of 10. My movie ranking, that means it was okay. It means, it's not bad. It's just, it's fine. It is what it is.
6:10, you say?
Yeah, because it can be it's either going to be a really boring game or it can be fantastic, but I have no idea. So I'm just going to give it, if I catch it, I catch it. This 7:30 game, that's actually my game of the week this week, not just because I'm playing in it, but because kind of what we touched on. I feel like my team, Sinkhole, is kind of starting to find their rhythm. Again, knock wood, we're going to have a full team this week. And when we do have a full team, I think we are a way different looking team. I mean, the fact that the boys held Storm Surge to, as close of a game as it was last week with one sub on the bench, like, so unbelievably proud of those guys. I told them immediately after the game, like, dude, I'm all the praise in the world for those guys. So that 7:30 game, I'm going to give that a 9 out of 10. No game is ever going to be a 10 out of 10. No movie is ever going to be a 10 out of 10. But 9 out of 10 is pretty damn close to being like what I think like a perfect matchup would be. That 8:30 game, I'm going to throw a 7 out of 10 on that one. Like, I feel like that's just going to be a good game. It's not going to be a fantastic game. I don't think it'll be the greatest game I've ever seen. I also don't think it's going to be the worst game I've ever seen. Certainly not the worst of the night, maybe. But just kind of like, I'm excited for that one. I think Storm Surge is going to have a huge surge, if you will, back to, being a team that's trying to get in the win column. And I mean, what else is there to say about Meteor other than Peter on every broadcast so far has referred to them as Meteor Mayheim? Why is he doing that? What does that mean? What is
Maybe
Mayheim?
Maybe it's an Albany accent, and he's picked it up already.
I never thought about that. Yeah, that very famous Albany accent that everybody always brings up. And then getting to that 9:30 game, I'm going to go ahead and give that one an 8 out of 10. I think, obviously, I do think that's a perfect candidate for a game of the week if you want it to be. But 8 out of 10 is, it's obviously not a 9. It's not the best, but 8 out of 10 is like, that's great. That's like, it's exactly what you want it to be. So yeah.
Awesome. You said you never give out a 10 out of 10, but I'm going to give you a 10 out of 10 for doing the movie review style prediction or preview of the week for each of the matchups. 10 out of 10, Alex. So,
and that's it. I'm out of here. See you guys.
All right. We'll see you later. But Bob, what do you think for the matchups in week 5?
6:30. I think Tsunami runs away with it. Just in case I kick off the tipsy talking twisters enough, I'm going to say Tsunami runs away with it. Just too many goals, too much firepower. I don't think Tipsy keeps up. I think Tipsy doubles their normal goal scoring, but I just think Tsunami wins by 3 or more. Sinkhole versus Firestorm. My notes say, Alex, are you going to have a full team? Because you're the lowest in the league in floor game played percentage at only 79%. I think Firestorm wins this, but I don't know how close it's going to be. I think it's going to be a 1 or 2 goal game if Sinkhole has their whole team. Meteor Mayhem versus Storm Surge. It's my number 1 team on the power rankings versus my number 7 team on the power rankings. I think Meteor Mayhem wins. I think it's by a couple of goals at least. I think Storm Surge is better than their record, but I think this is a tough matchup. Tough matchup for them to try to get off the schneid.
When when you said that was your number 1 team versus your number 7 team, and then you paused for a second, I thought naturally he's going to say, "So I'm going to pick Storm Surge to win this one."
Yeah, because this is like whose line is anyway. The rules are made up and the points don't matter. And then I agree with you too. Le Tremblement versus Fukushima is my goal of the week. I think Fukushima wins a 1-goal game in this one.
Another tight one. And you know what? I think that team is built to play close games. I think that's exactly the type of team that they are. Yeah, I appreciate the both of you guys joining me tonight. Just real quick, I don't think I gave my predictions for each one. Usually I do in the previous slides, but if I had to pick, and I'm going to go right down the line real fast, I'm going to say Tipsy, Firestorm, Meteor, and Le Tremblement are my picks for the wins this week. Alex, did you give picks or just rankings?
No, I tried to take the coward's way out and just talk positively about all the teams. No, I guess real quick, if I'm just going to have to blast through them, yeah, I agree. I think Tsunami comes back, has a big game this week. I can't pick against my boys in Sinkhole. I don't think it's going to be a blowout either which way, whoever wins. I definitely think this is a 1 or 2 goal game. But I got to go with Sinkhole. I do think Meteor takes the 8:30 game as well, but I really don't imagine this is going to be a blowout. Again, I think this is going to be a really close game. I just cannot see Storm Surge having another week where they just don't put it all together. I think they're due for a big game, but unfortunately do think maybe they fall by about a goal or two. And then in the 9:30, you know what, just because it's the 9:30 game and because I think I think Fukushima's built for a 9:30 game. I think they're the ones that just they can stick it out longer than every other team can. And I think we touched on it a little bit earlier. Until a little bit more is seen out of Le Tremblement, then I got to go with Fukushima on this one. But hey, prove me wrong. Everybody I picked against, please prove me wrong. Make it a good week.
So with that, I will say thank you for everyone who is tuning in. You'll be watching this at either 6:10 p.m. on Monday or 6:10 a.m. on Tuesday. And when you watch this, put a comment on the YouTube channel. Leave a comment. What are your rankings after week 4? How would you rank the teams right now? I'd love to hear from more people in the league on these rankings. So leave a comment. Let us know. Maybe you'll get highlighted by the RFHL mysterious ghost YouTube moderator, whoever it is. But leave your rankings in the comments. And with that, I will say thank you, Bob. Thank you, Alex. Real quick, Bob, any last words?
No, thanks for having me too. This was awesome.
Yeah, Alex, what you got? Anything?
No, just excited. I think this might be matchup wise. This might be the most exciting week we've had so far. So I'm excited to get her going.
Yeah, it's going to be a good week. So with that, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alex. Thank you to Bob. Is it Wednesday yet?
Damn, he just leaves?
Just leaves.
No goodbye, no nothing. He just leaves.